The last customer at Harbor and Vine left behind a folded napkin, half a glass of red wine, and a complaint about the weather. Megan Carter cleared the table without looking through the front windows. She already knew what was happening outside. The air had darkened over Boston all afternoon, and by the time her shift was supposed to begin, rain had started hammering the streets around Back Bay hard enough to turn headlights into smeared ribbons of white and gold. She had been scheduled for the evening, but she was still 3 blocks away when everything changed. Megan was running from the subway with her apron stuffed into her tote bag when she noticed an old woman sitting on the curb near a bus shelter. People hurried past beneath umbrellas. A delivery cyclist swerved around her. 2 college students glanced over and kept walking. The woman wore a mustard sweater darkened by rain. One hand gripped her ankle. Her silver hair clung to her cheeks. Megan stopped. Her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. Frank Sullivan. Again. She had already missed several calls. Rent was nearly 2 months behind. Ava needed shoes for school. The electric company had left a final notice on the kitchen table. Frank, the restaurant manager, had been looking for an excuse to get rid of Megan ever since she had asked why the servers' tip totals never seemed to match the printed receipts. She could not afford to be late. She also could not walk away. Megan crossed the street. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman lifted honey-colored eyes. "My ankle," she whispered. "I slipped." "I'll call an ambulance." "No hospital. You may have broken something. Please." The woman reached for Megan's wrist. Her grip was weak but determined. "Just get me somewhere dry." Megan hesitated for only a moment. Years earlier, her own mother had died while Megan was still trying to rebuild life after losing her husband, Andrew, in a construction accident. She remembered how often she had wished someone had stayed with her mother during the hours Megan could not. She crouched. "Put your arms around me." The woman blinked. "You cannot carry me. You're about to find out how stubborn I am." Megan lifted her onto her back. The old woman was light, but rain made every step dangerous. Halfway to the shelter, Megan's right loafer slid from her foot and floated toward a storm drain. She watched it spin once in the rushing water and disappear. She did not stop. The old woman began to cry quietly against Megan's shoulder. "You are safe," Megan murmured. "I've got you." Behind them, brakes hissed against wet pavement. A dark red luxury sedan stopped at the curb. A tall man in a navy suit jumped out without an umbrella and ran toward them. "Mom!" Megan glanced over her shoulder. The man's face had gone pale. The woman on Megan's back whispered, "Just get me to the shelter first." Megan did. She lowered her carefully onto the metal bench. The man dropped to one knee. "Mom, I've been looking everywhere." His eyes were the same honey color. Megan stepped back. The woman reached for her hand again. "What is your name?" "Megan." "Megan," she repeated, slowly, as if memorizing it. Then she said, "Whatever happens tomorrow, don't forget who you are." Megan almost laughed from nerves. Tomorrow felt too far away. She was already imagining Frank waiting with his arms crossed. Her phone buzzed again. "I have to go." The man looked up. "Wait, I can drive you." "No, thank you." She ran. 3 blocks through the rain, 1 foot bare, uniform soaked beneath her coat. When she reached Harbor and Vine, Frank stood at the service entrance. He looked at her missing shoe, wet hair, and trembling hands. Then he pointed toward his office. A cardboard box waited on the desk. Inside were Megan's spare shirt, her coffee thermos, a beige sweater, and the framed school photograph of Ava. Frank sat down. "Go ahead," he said. "Tell me the story." Megan stared at the box. She understood immediately that the truth no longer mattered. Outside, rain rattled against the kitchen vents. And somewhere near the bus shelter, a wealthy man was helping his mother into a red car, while repeating the name of a waitress he had never met before that night. Frank slid a document across the desk. Sign. Megan read it twice. It stated that she accepted the restaurant's settlement and waived any future claim regarding wages, benefits, or termination. The amount was insulting. What about this week's tips? Frank leaned back. What about them? And my unused leave? You abandoned your shift. I was helping an injured woman. That's your version. Megan stared at him. She was lying in the rain. Frank gave a dry laugh. People like us do not have time to play heroes. Rich people can do that because they can afford consequences. You have a kid. You should have remembered that before you decided to save the world. The sentence landed harder than Megan wanted to admit. For a second, Ava's face flashed before her. The shoes, the school lunch account, the rent. Then another memory came. After Andrew died, representatives from the construction company had placed papers in front of Megan before the funeral flowers had even wilted. The documents suggested Andrew had ignored safety procedures. Everyone on the crew knew the company had failed to provide proper equipment. But Megan had been 20-something, exhausted, frightened, and alone. She signed. The settlement disappeared into bills within months. Her regret lasted years. Megan put down the pen. I won't sign. Frank's expression changed. If you're firing me, fire me. But I'm not signing something that says I agree with this. He stood. You think another restaurant in Boston will hire you after I talk to people? Maybe. You think I don't know owners, managers, distributors? Megan swallowed. I said maybe. Frank pushed the cardboard box into her arms. Then go find out. Megan walked through the kitchen. Sarah, another waitress, stared at the box and covered her mouth. Isaac stopped washing glasses. His hands were dripping with soap. He gave Megan a small nod. It meant hold on. It meant I saw this. It meant I am sorry. Megan left through the alley. Beneath a metal awning, she allowed herself several minutes to cry. No more. Then she straightened. Ava was waiting. By the time Megan reached their apartment in Dorchester, the rain had weakened to a cold drizzle. Charlotte, their elderly neighbor, sat on the couch with 7-year-old Ava, asleep across her lap. Charlotte looked at Megan's box, soaked clothes, and bare foot. She did not ask what happened. Your girl ate rice and chicken, Charlotte whispered. Finished her spelling too. Megan nodded. Thank you. Charlotte squeezed her shoulder. Morning still comes, honey, even after ugly nights. Megan carried Ava to bed. Their apartment was small enough that the kitchen light reached the mattress behind the thin divider curtain. On the table lay a school notice about a class trip to the Science Museum. At the bottom, Ava had written in uneven handwriting, Mom, please say yes. Megan touched the words. She had $24 in her wallet. A knock sounded at the door. Megan froze. It was late. Charlotte never knocked that way. Megan looked through the peephole. The man from the rain stood in the hallway. Still in the navy suit. Still damp. She opened the door with the chain attached. How did you find me? He raised one hand. My name is Robert Montgomery. First, I owe you an apology. I used traffic cameras and someone from my security team. My mother kept repeating your name. Your mother? Her ankle is broken, but she'll recover. Megan released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Robert held a thick envelope. I also learned what happened at your job. No. You don't know what this is. I know enough. I wanted to repay what you lost. Megan shook her head. I didn't carry your mother because I expected money. I understand. No, you don't. Her voice softened. If I take that envelope, then tomorrow I'll start wondering what helping somebody is worth. I don't want to think that way. Robert looked at her for several seconds. Then he returned the envelope to his coat. You're right. A sleepy voice came from behind Megan. Mom? Ava appeared in frog print pajamas. She studied Robert. Are you the man from the red car? Robert crouched carefully. I am. Why are you here? Your mother helped me find someone very important. Who? My mom. Ava looked genuinely amazed. Your mom is still alive? Robert's face tightened. Yes, he said quietly. And tonight, your mother gave her back to me. He left soon afterward. The next morning, Megan found a cream-colored card beneath the doormat. On it was an address in Beacon Hill and a short message. Eleanor would like to see you. Megan spent most of the morning staring at the card. Beacon Hill might as well have been another country. She knew the streets from television, tourism ads, and the occasional catering shift where she had entered grand houses through service doors. Still, Eleanor had asked to see her. So Megan borrowed decent shoes from Charlotte, put on the navy dress she saved for serious occasions, tied her hair back, and took the train downtown. The Montgomery home stood on a quiet brick street, lined with old trees and iron railings. It was elegant, without looking new. The brass doorplate was polished. Ivy climbed part of the wall. Inside, Megan expected marble and silence. Instead, she found books stacked on tables, family photographs covering the walls, a Labrador asleep beside a fireplace, and the smell of cinnamon coffee. Eleanor sat in a green armchair near the window, her injured ankle supported on a stool. The moment she saw Megan, her face brightened. There she is. Megan smiled despite herself. How are you? Embarrassed, sore, and extremely grateful. Eleanor held out both hands. Megan sat beside her. For the next hour, Eleanor explained what had happened. Since the death of her husband several years earlier, she sometimes experienced periods of confusion. On good days, memory worked perfectly. On bad days, time folded in strange ways. During the storm, she had slipped out of medical observation because she became convinced that a bakery from her youth still existed near downtown. My husband Sebastian used to buy me sweet rolls there when we were dating, Eleanor said. I believed if I reached the bakery, he would be outside waiting. Megan squeezed her hand. That doesn't sound foolish. I'm an old woman, wandering through a storm, looking for a dead husband. That sounds like grief. Eleanor's eyes filled. She looked away for a moment. Then she said, Robert told me about your job. Megan sighed. He shouldn't have. He was frightened yesterday. Frightened sons confess everything to mothers. Megan smiled faintly. Eleanor leaned forward. I want you to work for me. No, you haven't heard the job. It doesn't matter. It does to me. Eleanor explained that she already had medical care. What she needed was companionship, someone to read with her, walk when her ankle healed, watch television, remind her of appointments, and talk when silence became too heavy. It would be employment, Eleanor said, a real salary, health coverage, benefits for you and Ava, a schedule that lets you take her to school. Megan felt heat rise to her face. Mrs. Montgomery, that's payment. For yesterday? Yes. Eleanor shook her head. No. Yesterday showed me something about you. Today, I am making a decision about tomorrow. It's still charity. Eleanor's expression sharpened. Why is receiving an honest job charity simply because someone learned your character in an unusual way? Megan did not answer. Eleanor continued. I need a companion I trust. You need work. Both things can be true without one of us humiliating the other. Megan stared at the floor. She thought of Andrew. She thought of the school trip notice. She thought of $24. 1 month, she finally said. A trial. 3. 1. 2. Megan laughed. Fine. 2. They shook hands. That afternoon, Arthur Monroe, the family's attorney, brought formal employment papers. Megan read every line before signing. The salary was several times what she had earned at Harbor and Vine. Her hands trembled. For the first time in years, she could imagine paying rent before the final notice arrived. When Megan left the house, relief lasted less than a minute. Near the service entrance, a familiar man stood beside a delivery van speaking with a security guard. Frank. He looked up. Their eyes met. His smile came slowly. "Well, Carter," he said, "you move fast." Megan kept walking. Then she stopped at the corner. Why was Frank there? She turned around and went back. Robert received her in a book-lined study. "Does Frank Sullivan work with your family?" Robert frowned, checked a file, then sat very still. Frank's beverage company supplied several Montgomery hotels and event properties. Megan told Robert everything. The dismissal. The waiver. The threat about industry contacts. The remark outside. Robert listened without interrupting. Then he asked his assistant to call Frank back, claiming there was an urgent problem with an upcoming delivery. When Frank arrived, Eleanor sat near the window. Megan sat across from Robert. Frank entered smiling. His face changed for half a second. Robert asked, "Do you know Megan Carter?" Frank recovered. "Former employee. She quit without notice." Megan stared at him. Robert folded his hands. "My mother is the woman Megan was carrying through the storm when she arrived late." Frank's mouth opened. "If I had known." Robert cut him off. "That is the problem. If you had known my mother's name, you would have behaved differently." Eleanor spoke calmly. "No business connected to this family will buy from you again." Frank turned pale. Robert added that every invoice submitted by Frank's company would be audited. As Frank left, he passed close to Megan. His voice was almost a whisper. "You think this is over?" Then he smiled. "I know where you live." The next several weeks were strange enough that Megan sometimes wondered whether the storm had divided her life into two separate stories. Every morning she arrived at Eleanor's house on time. Eleanor waited with coffee and a list of things she wanted to discuss. They read novels. They watched old black-and-white movies. Eleanor taught Megan card games and told stories about raising Robert, managing family investments after Sebastian became ill, and refusing to become invisible just because she grew older. Megan listened. Yet twice each week, she still went to job interviews. Eleanor noticed. "Why are you trying to leave?" "I'm not trying to leave." "Then why interview elsewhere?" Megan folded the newspaper in her lap. "Because I want one job that I can tell Ava I got without anybody feeling sorry for me." Eleanor sighed. "You are exhausting." "So I've been told." The first restaurant never called back. At a hotel in Cambridge, an operations manager finally admitted the truth. "Frank has been talking," he said. "He knows people. Nobody wants trouble." Megan left with her head high. Outside, she sat on a bench and cried. Then she wiped her face and went to pick up Ava. That evening, Isaac came to the apartment carrying a thick yellow folder. Megan let him in. He placed the folder on the kitchen table. "What is this?" "Copies." "Of what?" "Tips." Inside were photographs of receipts, weekly payout sheets, and handwritten comparisons. Customer gratuities showed one total. Employees had received far less. "I've been copying records for almost 2 years," Isaac said. "Frank's taking money, sometimes a third, sometimes almost half." Megan felt sick. "From everyone?" "Everyone." "Why didn't you report him?" Isaac looked down. "I have kids." Megan understood immediately. "Why give this to me now?" "Because you were the only one who ever asked. And because yesterday I heard Frank on the phone." Isaac's voice lowered. "He said he was going to ruin you." Megan's hands went cold. Isaac continued. He mentioned Ava's school. For several seconds, Megan heard nothing except the refrigerator humming. The next morning she took the folder to Arthur. Robert joined them. Arthur examined the documents slowly. "This is serious. Can the workers get their money back?" Possibly, if the records hold and people testify. Robert spoke immediately. I'll cover legal costs. Megan turned to him. No. He looked surprised. If this becomes your family's revenge against Frank, the workers disappear from the story. It has to belong to them. Robert nodded. You're right. Arthur smiled slightly. Then we build it around the employees. One by one, people agreed to speak. Sarah had saved pay stubs. A former bartender named Samuel had messages showing Frank pressuring staff not to question tip distributions. Another cook remembered altered records. Fear began turning into evidence. Until authorities acted, Robert insisted on increased security. Ava started spending afternoons at Eleanor's house. She loved the place. She fed the Labrador beneath the table, even after being told not to. She did homework in the library. She and Eleanor made hot chocolate with cinnamon. One afternoon, Megan and Robert stood on the porch, watching Eleanor walk slowly through the garden with Ava. Eleanor used a cane. Ava dragged her backpack and talked continuously. Robert said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting my mother have this." Megan looked at him. Before she could answer, Eleanor called from the garden. "If both of you keep standing there pretending you don't know you're fond of each other, I may die from impatience before anything else gets me." Megan nearly dropped her coffee. Robert looked away, laughing. For 10 whole seconds, Megan forgot Frank Sullivan existed. Late that night, Isaac called. "Frank's been drinking. 2 men came asking where you live." Robert wanted to drive Megan home himself. She refused. "The family driver, then." Megan agreed. When she reached the apartment, she sent the driver away. It was pride. She knew that later. At the time, it felt like independence. 5 minutes after she locked the door, heavy footsteps climbed the stairs. They stopped outside. A fist struck the wood. "Carter!" "Frank." Megan's chest tightened. "Go away. I only want to talk. Leave, or I call the police." He kicked the door. Ava woke and appeared behind the curtain. Megan grabbed her phone. "Sweetheart, under the kitchen table, now." Another kick. The frame shook. Megan called emergency services. Then a second male voice sounded in the hallway. "Step away from that door. Robert." Megan's knees almost gave out. Frank laughed drunkenly. "The millionaire came to save you." Megan heard a struggle, a heavy impact, then silence. Robert called through the door. "Megan, open up, it's safe." She opened it cautiously. Robert stood outside with a small cut near his eyebrow. Frank was on the floor, stunned and cursing. Sirens rose from the street. Police took Frank away in handcuffs while rain continued falling over Dorchester. Megan stood beneath a street lamp holding Ava, who had fallen half asleep against her shoulder. Robert remained nearby until the patrol cars disappeared. Only then did Megan look at him. "I told you not to follow me. I know. You ignored me. Yes. That's not charming." "I wasn't trying to be charming. Despite everything." Megan almost laughed. Then her face crumpled. "I don't belong in your world." Robert stayed quiet. Megan continued, before courage failed. "I live in a building where the heater complains louder than the tenants. I compare grocery prices. I never finished college. I wear the same dress to every serious event because I only own one. I cry on public transportation when nobody is looking." Robert stepped closer. And one day you might remember all of that. I already know all of that. You don't understand. I understand enough." Megan shook her head. Robert gently wiped rain from her forehead. "My world changed the night I saw you carrying my mother barefoot through a storm." He looked at Ava. "It changed again when your daughter made hot chocolate with her." Then he looked back at Megan. "I'm not asking you to enter the life I had before you. I'm telling you that you already changed the life I have now. Megan's eyes filled. For years, she had survived by refusing to lean. That night, for a few minutes, she allowed herself. She rested against Robert while Ava slept between them. Across town, Eleanor sat awake beside a framed photograph of Sebastian. She whispered to it as though he were still in the room. "They're coming, Seb. The family you worried Robert would never have. They're coming." The officers asked Megan whether Frank had threatened her before. At first, she almost said no. Years of service work had taught her to sort insults into a private drawer marked normal. Then she remembered his words in the Montgomery hallway, his promise that he knew where Ava went to school, the calls Isaac had overheard, and the men asking questions at Harbor and Vine. "Yes," she said, "he has." Robert stood several feet away while she spoke. He didn't answer for her. That mattered. Megan had spent too much of her life having men in offices explain her own experience back to her. Robert could have taken control with one phone call, one lawyer, one powerful name. Instead, he waited until the officer finished and asked Megan what she wanted to do next. "I want it documented," she said. "All of it." Ava woke fully when they reached Eleanor's house near dawn. She was quiet, in a way that frightened Megan more than crying would have. "Is the bad man coming here?" "No." "Are you sure?" Megan sat on the edge of the guest bed and pulled her close. "I cannot promise that nothing scary will ever happen, but I can promise that when it does, you will not face it alone." Ava thought about this. "Did you face scary things alone?" "Too many." "Why?" Megan looked toward the doorway, where Eleanor stood in her robe, pretending she had not been listening. "Because I thought I had to." Eleanor came in and sat beside them. "That is a very common mistake," she said. Ava reached for her hand. By sunrise, all three were asleep in the same room. Ava curled under a quilt, Megan in a chair beside the bed, Eleanor dozing upright near the window. When Robert walked past, he stopped without entering. For the first time since her death, the house did not feel empty in the morning. The investigation accelerated after Frank's arrest. Isaac testified. Sarah did too. Samuel produced messages. Charlotte, who had worked in bookkeeping for decades, helped Megan sort copies into neat folders at the kitchen table. Arthur built the case carefully. Megan refused television interviews. "This isn't about me being a hero," she said. "It's about workers getting what was taken from them." Robert respected that. Months passed. The restaurant employees recovered withheld tips and wages. Frank's distribution company collapsed under legal and financial scrutiny, but the workers there were retained when the business was sold. Harbor and Vine changed ownership. The Montgomery Group bought it after the previous owners chose to sell. Before Megan agreed to advise on the reopening, she made one condition. Nobody gets punished because they were afraid of Frank. Former workers were invited back. Sarah returned. Samuel returned. Several kitchen employees returned. Isaac became floor manager. On reopening night, Megan stood behind the bar, wearing a white apron the staff had given her as a joke. Isaac stared. "You don't work here." "I remember." "Then why are you serving food?" Megan picked up 2 plates. "Table 4 has been waiting long enough." Table 4 had been the table left unattended the night she stopped for Eleanor. Later, Megan sat there with Ava, Eleanor, and Robert. The restaurant was busy. Servers moved quickly. The kitchen shouted. A customer complained that his soup was not hot enough. Megan smiled. It was not paradise. It was simply fairer. That mattered more. Soon afterward, Megan accepted a position helping redesign the Montgomery Group's employee support program. Previously, the program had existed mostly in annual reports. Megan turned it into something practical. Emergency grants for families after workplace accidents. Temporary housing for single parents. Scholarships for workers' children. Legal consultations for wage disputes. a fund for employees recovering from injury. She insisted the office be modest. If someone comes in because they cannot pay rent, they shouldn't have to walk through marble to ask for help. Robert agreed. Ava remained in public school because Megan insisted wealth should expand her daughter's world, not erase the one she already understood. Most afternoons, Ava studied beside Eleanor. One day, while correcting a worksheet, Ava said casually, "Grandma Eleanor, you spelled that wrong." The room went still. Eleanor stared at her. Ava kept writing. Megan covered her mouth. Robert turned toward the window. Eleanor blinked away tears. "Grandmothers are allowed mistakes," she said. That evening, Megan found Eleanor crying quietly in the kitchen. "I thought I was too old to be given another granddaughter," Eleanor whispered. Megan hugged her. "And I thought Ava had already lost too much to get another grandmother." From then on, no one corrected the title. The first staff meeting after the investigation began took place in a rented community room, not in a hotel boardroom. Megan insisted on that too. 20 workers came. Some were angry. Some were embarrassed. A few still worried Frank would somehow return and punish them. Isaac stood first. "I kept copies because I was afraid," he said. "Then I was ashamed because I kept being afraid." Sarah shook her head. "You had children." So did Megan. Megan raised a hand. "No comparing courage. Fear is not a contest." That sentence changed the room. People spoke one by one. A dishwasher described missing holiday pay. A bartender described being told he would lose weekend shifts if he questioned the tip pool. A cook named Sam said Frank had once made him work while sick because he could not afford to lose a day. Arthur wrote everything down. Robert sat in the back and said almost nothing. Afterward, he asked Megan why she had stopped Sarah from praising her. Because the minute you make one person the brave one, everyone else starts thinking they were cowards. And you don't believe that? I believe most people are brave after they know they won't stand alone. Robert remembered that. Months later, when the employee program expanded, those words appeared in its training guide, though Megan refused to let anyone put her name beneath them. The legal process moved slower than television made justice look. There were interviews, records requests, delays, and mornings when Megan felt nothing was happening at all. Eleanor taught her patience. "Courts move like old women with sore ankles," she said. "Slowly, but sometimes they still reach the right room." Megan laughed. She needed that laugh. Because outside the case, life continued in ordinary ways. Ava lost a tooth. Charlotte's kitchen sink leaked. The Labrador stole half a roast from Eleanor's counter. Megan burned a pot of soup while helping Ava with fractions. Those small events kept the larger drama from swallowing them. They reminded Megan that justice was not a grand final scene. It was the ability to return to ordinary life without fear. Megan and Robert did not rush. That mattered to both of them. Robert had lost his wife years earlier. Megan had lost Andrew. Neither wanted love to become a contest with the dead. They spoke about them openly. Robert told Megan how grief had turned his home into a place where everything looked expensive and nothing felt warm. Megan told Robert how Andrew used to sing badly while cooking breakfast and how his work boots stayed beside the door for months after his death because she could not move them. They never asked each other to forget. Instead, they made room. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became long talks after Eleanor and Ava fell asleep. Long talks became weekends in which Robert showed Ava how to plant tomatoes, while Megan learned that Robert was hopeless at folding laundry. One evening in early autumn, they sat beneath the old tree in Eleanor's garden. Robert did not present a dramatic speech. He simply took Megan's hand. "I want to build the rest of my life with you." Megan looked at him for a long time. "I stay Megan Carter," Robert smiled. "That is the woman I am asking. I don't become some polished version you can introduce at charity dinners." I would be terrified if you did. And Ava comes first. She should. Megan laughed through tears. Then yes. Half a year after the storm, the garden behind Eleanor's house, filled with pale flowers and autumn leaves. The wedding was deliberately small. Charlotte arrived in a violet dress and complained that everyone had made too much fuss. Isaac stood beside Robert as best man. Sarah came with her family. Arthur brought his wife. Restaurant workers sat beside hotel executives and neighbors from Dorchester. Ava walked down the path first. She scattered petals with the seriousness of someone performing a national duty. When she reached Robert, she motioned for him to bend down. He crouched. "You better take care of my mom." Robert whispered, "That's the plan." Ava kissed his cheek. Then Megan appeared. Her dress was ivory, rather than bright white. She carried roses cut from Eleanor's garden. Charlotte walked beside her. Megan looked across the guests. For years, she had thought families were things people either inherited or lost. Now she saw another possibility. Sometimes families were assembled. A neighbor beside a lawyer. A waitress beside an executive. A child beside an elderly woman who had once been a stranger on a wet curb. At the front, Robert took Megan's hands. His vows were simple. He promised to respect the life she had built before him. He promised to love Ava without pretending Andrew had never existed. He promised to care for Eleanor through clear days and confused ones. Then he said, "I will never forget the night I saw you carrying my mother." Megan's voice trembled when her turn came. "I promise not to disappear inside your name, your money, or your world. I want to remain the woman you met in the rain." Robert smiled. "That's exactly who I love." They married beneath a simple arch of flowers. Eleanor cried openly. Isaac cried harder. Charlotte pretended not to. After dinner, music filled the garden. Ava danced until she could barely keep her eyes open. Later, Megan slipped away to the fountain. From her purse, she removed a tiny brown loafer keychain Robert had given her months earlier. A note had come with it. "So you never lose the other one." Megan smiled. Then she looked upward. "Andrew," she whispered. The word came easier than expected. "We made it." Her eyes filled. "Ava is safe. She has people. I have people." She touched the small shoe. "I thought surviving meant carrying everything alone. I was wrong." Footsteps approached. Robert appeared carrying sleeping Ava. Eleanor followed with her cane. A light drizzle began. Ava stirred. "Mom, it's raining." "Yes, sweetheart. Like the night you found Grandma?" Eleanor smiled. "Very much like that." Megan wrapped an arm around Eleanor. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered. Megan answered, without planning the words. "Thank you, Mom." Eleanor stopped. It was the first time Megan had called her that. The old woman closed her eyes. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the four of them walked toward the warm house together. Long after the wedding guests had gone, Megan remained by the living room window while the rain tapped softly against the glass. She thought about the woman she had been before that first storm. That Megan believed life was mostly arithmetic. Rent against groceries. Bus fare against school supplies. Hours worked against hours needed by a child. Exhaustion against another morning. She had believed dignity was something fragile that people with little money could afford only when circumstances were kind. Frank had understood that fear. He had built his power from it. He knew that a worker with overdue rent often swallowed words a comfortable person might speak. He knew a parent could be frightened into silence more easily when a child's dinner depended on the next paycheck. For a while, Megan had almost accepted that this was simply how the world worked. Then came the curb. The mustard sweater. The old woman nobody knew was rich. That detail mattered most. Megan understood now that if Eleanor had been recognized immediately, the story would have meant something different. People might have stopped because of her name, her wealth, or the possibility of reward. But on that first night, Eleanor had been only an elderly woman in pain. Megan had been only a tired waitress. Nothing about the moment promised anything. That was why the choice mattered. Years later, when frightened workers entered Megan's office, she never promised that kindness would make them wealthy or that justice would always arrive in time. She knew better. Good people still lost jobs. Careful workers still got hurt. Some families buried people they were not ready to lose. Some lawsuits took years. Some apologies never came. Some wrongs could be compensated but never undone. Human life did not become fair simply because one unfair man finally faced consequences. What changed Megan was something quieter. She stopped believing hardship had to make people smaller. Suffering could make someone cautious without making them cruel. Poverty could make choices harder without making compassion foolish. Accepting help could preserve dignity instead of destroying it. That last lesson took her the longest. For years, Megan had treated independence like a locked door. If she needed nobody, nobody could disappoint her. If she accepted nothing, nobody could claim ownership of her gratitude. If she carried every burden herself, nobody could drop it. Andrew's death taught her to survive. Motherhood taught her endurance. But Eleanor, Robert, Charlotte, Isaac, Sarah, Arthur, and Ava taught her another form of strength. People were not meant only to carry themselves. Sometimes Megan carried Eleanor through rain. Sometimes Isaac carried evidence into Megan's kitchen because fear had become heavier than secrecy. Sometimes Charlotte carried a sleeping child so Megan could work. Sometimes Robert stood between danger and a door. Sometimes Ava gave an elderly woman one simple word, "Grandma," and restored a room inside her heart that grief had left empty. No one remained forever the rescuer. No one remained forever the rescued. Life kept exchanging those roles. That was what older people seemed to understand sooner than the young. The hand you offer today may be the hand you need tomorrow, and receiving it does not make yesterday's kindness less pure. Megan looked toward the staircase where her family slept. The storm had not rewarded her. She no longer told the story that way. It had revealed her. It had placed suffering in front of her at the worst possible time and asked a simple question. Who are you when doing the right thing costs something? Megan had answered without speeches. She had answered by bending down, by lifting a stranger, by walking forward after losing a shoe. One bare foot against cold pavement. One frightened woman carrying another. That was all. Yet sometimes a life does not change because a door opens. Sometimes it changes because, for one difficult moment, someone refuses to walk past another human being. And long after the rain stops, that choice keeps traveling.